Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Kim Owen. We warmly welcome the family of Private Ernest Leslie Norman, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Ernest Leslie Norman. Ernest Norman was born in 1892, one of 5 boys and 8 girls born to George and Alice Norman. Ernest attended the local state school and worked as a farmhand on the family farm at Youghal, near Mount Gambier in South Australia. Ernest Norman enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 28th of March 1916, and after 4 months of training set sail from Adelaide, arriving in England in September 1916. In December, he transferred to the 50th Battalion and began his service in the Somme region of the Western Front. He arrived just in time for the terribly cold and wet winter of 1916 and 1917. One of his only comforts was that he was serving with his older brother Lewis, who had joined the 50th Battalion in February 1916. The 2 brothers endured 4 months of the hardships and drudgery of a war of attrition. They did not take part in major battles, but rather spent time manning the front line and enduring intermittent German shelling and machine gun fire, or training behind the front. In early 1917, the Germans began to make a tactical retreat to the Hindenburg Line, a newly fortified and shortened series of trenches designed to establish a more defensible position. As they withdrew, the Germans fortified and held on to a number of key towns and villages in order to delay the Allied advances. On the 2nd of April 1917, Ernest and the 50th Battalion were tasked with taking part on an assault on a heavily defended town of Naroi. At 5:15 a.m, Australian troops leapt out of their trenches into no man's land, encountering heavy German machine gun and artillery fire and barbed wire entanglements. The attack had been preceded by an Allied artillery bombardment, but this had not been heavy enough to seriously disrupt German defences. Despite this, the troops of the 50th Battalion advanced quickly, at some points so quickly that they had to be ordered to slow down to avoid running into their own artillery barrage. The attack was successful but costly. The 50th Battalion incurred 360 of the more than 600 Australian casualties suffered on that day. Ernest's brother Lewis was taken prisoner and spent the rest of the war in the German prisoner of war camp. Ernest himself disappeared in the thick of fighting. Initially reported missing in action, confirmation was later received that he had been killed in action. He was 25 years old. Initially buried where he fell on the battlefield, his remains now lie in the Naroi Australian Cemetery, underneath the epitaph chosen by his grieving parents, "One beloved." Private Ernest Leslie Norman is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. In the photograph displayed today by the Pool of Reflection, featuring the 5 Norman brothers, Ernest can be seen standing in the centre. His brother Lewis is seated in uniform. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ernest Leslie Norman, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.